MMO playing, your friends were playing. David works for Amazon, so he knows what he is talking about. So I'm going to listen very well. Oh, he does. He does.
Things in this program. Yes.
So I'm going to listen very carefully. Thank you very much. Take it away.
Hi, everyone. So, yes, my name's David Chatterton, but everyone calls me Chats. I'm at that age where at primary school, one of my classes was either called David, Michael, or Andrew. There were 6 Davids in my primary school. So we were all called by our nicknames, and mine stuck. And so there are people in the world who only know me as Chats. So Chats is fine. And I know we do have another David here today. So look, I want to talk about building a serverless Discord bot. And this is a side project. So yes, I work at Amazon. This is not an Amazon talk, right? Sponsored talk. I'm just talking about the side project and I thought it was interesting. I was inspired by Peter's talk last month, show something that you're working on. Side projects are great because it means you can, well, you're the judge of the quality, right? You're just, judging your own style, the own things you're putting in place, how much testing you're putting in, all this sort of thing. It's really is up to you what you do there. There's not your employer, looking over your shoulder. And look, a challenge came along where myself and some friends were playing an MMO called New World. And we act as a group of mercenaries. Sounds really cool, doesn't it? And we go around and we run these 50-player raids for other clans and companies in the game. So they pay us in the game's currency to do this, and we go and win these raids for them most of the time. We collect all these stats and other things to be able to, pay the players in our company and also track how we're progressing, if we're improving. And we were doing it manually. And it was taking someone a lot of time. And they were saying, look, I'm sick of doing this. I don't want to do it anymore. And so I put my hand up and said, well, why don't we try and automate this? We all communicate over Discord. So who uses Discord for something? A few hands. Okay, I'll look at some more. So, Discord's a great application for verbal chat, streaming your game, what you're playing, and also, obviously, commands and chat as well. And Discord bots are very popular. There's so many bots out there for various things. Anytime a new game comes out, there's new bots being written for it. So let's talk about how I went about building a bot for this particular MMO for a particular company. So each of these invasions, we get these ladders at the end of the invasion describing how we went. And unfortunately, the ladder isn't sitting on one screen. It's actually, we have to scroll down through the ladder, and it ends up taking about 7 screenshots to capture the whole ladder, the results. We do about 6 invasions a week. So you can imagine from a manual point of view, this is painful, right? Tracking this sort of data. So the goals I set were, we want to be able to generate reports, especially on a monthly basis, to work out who gets paid what, track our stats. I want to make it easy for anyone to use, right? So simple Discord commands. I don't need to know about the infrastructure behind the scenes. I want to get this up and running quickly, like within a couple of days, have something working. And of course, have it run as cheaply as possible. So the goal I set myself was, I didn't want this to cost more than about a coffee a month. Right? That's a Melbourne coffee. I was in Sydney earlier this week. I noticed that coffees are cheaper. They're also crap, but the Melbourne coffees there's a good $1 premium in Melbourne on coffees. That's fine. Yeah. Anyway, so you want cheaper coffee? Yeah, go to Sydney. Also, it's a great opportunity to learn some stuff along the way. Sure, yes, I do work at Amazon, and I know a lot of these services quite well, but I knew that I was going to find some things and learn some things as I went. So the first question I had for myself was, well, how can I get the text from these images? And I thought the easiest way to try and prove this is this going to work, even get off the ground, was just to go to a service called Textract, go to the console there, load up one of the images, specify, hey, this is a table, this is what I'm expecting to get out of it. What do I get? Right? And then you can see on the right-hand side here that it gave me a table of stats, which is pretty good. So I can work with this. And then looking at documentation, I could see there's sample code there to take the output from Textract, which is actually quite complex, because it actually identifies exact pixels where each of these words were, and it's a really complex data structure where I just wanted really a CSV. Right, so yes, that's possible. So my first architecture, the first deployment of this, what do you think I used? Yes, I am a trainer, so I'm going to ask you questions. What do you think as my first architecture? What would you do as the first thing, the easiest thing to do? Sorry?
Put in DB.
Put him in DB.
DB. No worries.
DynamoDB, yes.
Yeah, results.
The results, yes, DynamoDB. How am I going to get the images in there in the first place? S3, and then Lambda's going to be the thing that executes it. Right. And so S3, Lambda, DynamoDB, and you can use service. That's what we talked about last month at this meetup. Application Composer, you can drag and drop this and it'll spit out the template for you. Right. So I'm using AWS SAN as my infrastructure as code. It's a service I'm very familiar with. I know last month we talked about SST. That looks really cool. I want to play with it. I decided not to in this project because I wanted to focus on some other things. So drop the screenshots into a bucket, have it scan the images, dump the results into DynamoDB. Does this work? And so, within a day, I had something that was spitting out some results into a table. I was still logging into the console manually to get the report out, DynamoDB. I haven't built anything else yet, but at least we had a proof of concept very quickly. So over the next week, I started building this out and thinking about what's the other functionality I need. I need to be able to identify who are the members of our company and track their stats, who are the other people who are in that raid as well. Great that they participate. We don't care about their stats though. We want to get stats about the individual invasions and a monthly report. And so I started building out Lambdas to do these things, effectively querying the table and putting a simple API through API Gateway in front of that. Right. Once again, through Application Composer, it's pretty easy to specify the stuff and have it spit out a good chunk of that template for you. And just start exercising that business logic in those Lambdas and getting that working. This stage, I'm still running it and testing it myself manually by hand, right? Using curl and other things to trigger these APIs. I haven't really got any tests in place. I'm using single table, DynamoDB. So this type of workload, DynamoDB works really well because it's eventually consistent. I don't care if I upload an image and then upload another one and overwrite that data on the table. For this particular application, I don't care, right? I don't have to worry about locking transactions or anything like that. I can also easily store different types of data in that same table just by using different primary keys. So I've got member data, invasion data, stuff about the stats and the monthly stats all sitting in the same table. I can easily query this. And just by putting a little bit of thought into that, my business logic is just doing gets and queries against the table. I don't have to do a scan for anything, which is what I really want to avoid doing scans. But the best thing about using DynamoDB is cost in this example here, right? Most of the time, my bot is doing absolutely nothing, right? There's 6 invasions a week where someone's going to be running commands on this Discord bot. So I can just set this up for on demand. I'm only going to pay for APIs to DynamoDB, and the rest of the time it's idle, and it's only costing me for the storage. And I'm well within free tier, right? So DynamoDB really is costing me almost nothing. And we'll see that a bit later. All right, so has anyone here built a Discord bot before? No? All right, so with the command line interface, so you can see here, you can type a command. So you start with a / and whatever the bot is, and then you'll have a series of other commands going with that. So in this case, adding a member, it's going to ask me for the player's name, their faction. There's some optional parameters I can pass in. And so to set this up, within Discord, you basically define a YAML file which lays out your command structure. Right. What are the different layers in the command? Which things are required? Which things are optional? What are the types of those things you're providing, including files? And I knew I was going to need that. Right. So one of these things could be a file, and we'll see that in my demo a bit later. So once you've defined that structure, so you create the bot in the Discord console, you can then define that structure. Then you can start receiving requests for your bot. Right? So through that API gateway, you'll start getting payloads look like this. And the payload looks very similar to the command structure you just defined, right? It effectively is. So, you know, member, add, player's name, the faction, other optional stuff can be there. It's a fairly simple structure to work with, right? To pull the data out and retrieve everything out of it. Yes.
How do you receive the or saying so this is a response in, right?
Yeah.
So how that part of Discord?
So Discord is sending me this, so it's calling my API. So I register my API
You register, yeah.
DNS name there.
And you
It'll
send
call,
this to them.
and you know, someone types that command, I'll get that, and then I need to respond back 200, and with some content which it will then display back to the user. Yeah, no, that's a fair question.
No, it's just-
Yeah, that's right. And it's, you know, really quite straightforward to get that sort of interaction going. And then you can start defining quite complex command structures if you want to. All right, so a lot of people, for their bots, they're only going to run them on their gaming PC, so they're only really running when they're playing with their friends. However, some people want to run their bots 24/7. And so majority of bots will be running, they'll just find a cheap virtual hosting provider, just a simple Linux box virtually, and put their bot there and let it run and keep it, you know, a few dollars a month to run it that way. They still then have to, all right, obviously there's a server to manage, Linux to patch, all those sorts of challenges with running a virtual machine. The hosting provider might take care of a lot of that for them, but there's still something to think about. However, with this bot, Serverless is a really good fit. I'm only getting commands infrequently. I want to keep costs really low. And while Serverless is great for scaling up, it's also really good for scaling down, right? Hopefully to zero, and certainly in this case it does. No infrastructure really to manage. And so cost-wise, you know, I'm thinking that at worst, my service is going to use much of this, but in reality, it turns out it's a lot cheaper. All right, so there are other people who have built serverless Discord bots, and thank you to them because their blogs were very helpful in identifying some of the issues I ran into with Discord. And so. All right, so my third iteration was adding this API. So Discord is going to do a post. It's going to call this Lambda function, which is my, you know, essentially my bot. And I've moved all the business logic from these lambdas effectively into this. This becomes a big monolithic function. It's routes based on the command, calls whatever code, and most of that code is querying, you know, that DynamoDB table and returning results back. I've still got my S3 bucket for dropping files in, but I've now started to implement commands where I can call a command, pass in a file. It will download that file into my bucket, and that will trigger automatically that processing of that image for me. All right, so users can upload an image, basically pass in a path to the file from Discord CN, get it to download to S3 and process. So that seems to be working pretty well, and I'm thinking at this point I can probably start getting rid of these other APIs, not really using them now. Everything's being driven through here, and I've handed it over to some other people in the company to start playing with. Hey, try this. Yeah, build it. Seems to be working pretty well. Let's see if you can do an invasion and collect all the stats and see how that goes. So I'm all done, right? Then they start saying, "I'm seeing this error." Right? And you go, okay. And then I look at that and going, "Hey, my bot ran. I can see in the logs the bot has successfully done that command. What's going on?" And then, yeah, look at the Discord docs, and it's like, oh, Discord expects a response in 3 seconds. It's not going to wait forever. So my architecture is synchronous. Right? I assumed that my interactions with Discord were going to be synchronous, when in fact, for what I'm doing, I actually need to be asynchronous. Right? So the downloading, scanning, processing the images, especially when we're talking about 7 of them, I can't guarantee it's going to happen in 3 seconds. In fact, they're already seeing it that wasn't. Right? So I need some way of orchestrating this workload to download and process these 7 images, generate invasion report, generate month report, post updates back to Discord, and Discord supports a webhook. So I can just call this webhook with the response back later on whenever I'm done. Retry stuff when there's errors. And so you can probably guess what service I'm going to show next. And it's a service that we all have a love-hate relationship with. Right? So if you've never used this service, Step Functions is awesome, and it also has its challenges. Right, to work. So I can define that workflow in Step Functions where I can come in, check that the invasion's been created. I can then iterate over those 7 images. Right, so I've got a Lambda which is going to process them, download, process them. Then I'm going to do the invasion stats, and then the monthly stats. And so my good happy path, I'm coming down here. And then these other boxes over here is where I can handle errors. So there's errors at various points. I can generate messages going back. So Step Functions is great for this because this can run for a very long time. And I'm only paying for the steps that it's executing, right? I'm not paying for the execution time that it's running. So from a cost point of view, it works really well. It also has a new feature called being able to call a HTTP endpoint, which is one of the things I wanted to try. So this is very new. This feature, I think it was reinvented last year or early this year that got announced. Basically, that Step Functions could directly call an endpoint. You didn't have to call a Lambda to go and do it. Right? Get rid of the Lambda if you can possibly can. So I thought, oh, let's try it. And it turned out to be a bit more complex than I thought because it's actually not Step Functions which is making this call for you. It's actually EventBridge. So EventBridge already had a feature called API Destinations, a way of calling a third-party endpoint. And so what you're actually doing here is you have to set up a EventBridge connection like this. This is in my SAM template. And specify the authentication you're going to use with your HTTP call to that webhook or endpoint, whatever you're calling. And it can support OAuth and other things like that if you wanted to. So in the Step function, I have to specify the URL I want to call that's getting passed in here as a parameter. This connection over here. So I've got to predefine that, create that. And then the message that I want to actually send off. So it was a bit more complex than I thought it would be, but it works. And EventBridge will automatically retry. So if it's trying to call that endpoint, and there's a problem, it will try a few times before it give up and return an error back. So now we're thinking about how do I architect this asynchronously. Then my architecture had quite a significant change at this point. So let me dive into what the architecture looks like now in a bit more detail. So firstly, you notice I've got a Lambda layer sitting here now. One of the problems I run into was testing. So with SAM, it's certainly easy to be able to deploy your Lambda functions locally as containers and test them there. Send them events, get the responses back, and you can generate a test suite against and hit it that way. It's not very quick, right? And sort of seeing those events, and you're sort of relying on the interface you've got to your Lambda functions. You can't sort of pick and choose your actual methods and stuff that you've got in all your business logic and test that. So what I wanted to do instead was, I'm using Python. I wanted to pull my business logic out into its own package and test that with PyTest using normal sort of Python tools. And I'm just going to deploy that package as a layer that each of these Lambda functions can then pull in. So the layer is effectively like a shared library that these Lambda functions can all use. And it just made it so much easier to test the business logic. So I can hammer that locally. And then I've still got a little bit of some Lambda test. But these Lambda functions here, these are now just wrappers around this business logic. They're really simple. Not much code to them at all. So my test for Lambda functions is really just an exercise to make sure, yeah, the basic thing is working, the business logic tests against this. All right, so step functions. So you saw that large step function I showed before. That's that one there. It's going to call those 3 Lambda functions and do all the error handling and call back to Discord as well. So step functions does a great job of handling errors within that process, retrying things if you want, and that sort of thing. But if there's a problem with the step function, who handles that? Sorry? D or Q. The dead letter Q. Can you say the dead letter Q as a step function?
So yes.
I don't know if you can. So a common pattern is to use another state machine, step function, like as a dead hand timer. Right. So I pass the event into here. This then calls this. And we'll watch for this and make sure this doesn't finish within a certain time. It'll treat that as an error and can respond back to Discord accordingly. Right. And I knew that Discord had a maximum response time of 15 minutes. So I think I've got this at 10 minutes or something like that. If this is still going at that length of time, just kill it. Nothing good is going to happen at that point. Right? I'm probably just spending money running something that's never going to work. Actually, all right, I'll show this and then I'll do the demo. So tracking costs. So I took this snapshot a week or two ago, just to see how I was going cost-wise. Sydney is where I'm running the production version that my friends are using. Singapore is where I'm testing it. All right. And so you can see here, all the costs really are in TextRack. There's a small cost there in DynamoDB. Partly related because I got backups running that on that. But really, it's all TextRack. TextRack has free tier only 3 months, so I might be creating another free tier account soon. And this is being recorded, isn't it? I'm not going to do that. No. And I'll see. The first 100 scans are free, so I'm expecting this to cost only a couple of dollars, few dollars at most.
Roughly.
I might throw it. Yeah, less than yeah.
Oh, depends on where
you're getting it. And so from a cost point of view, I'm very happy with that. Right, I can live with that. And I just got to stop testing so much, and that'll keep the cost down. All right, let's do a quick demo. Show us how this looks. All right, so on the right-hand side, you'll see Discord. And I've just been, running some commands just to check that I'm connected to it and it's still working. I've preloaded some members into it, so there's a bit of data there. And what I thought I'd run is a couple of commands just to sort of show how it works. So let's just do a quick command like, sorry, my mouse is slipping down. Let's get that out of the way. Right, invasion list. So a list of invasions. It will default to the current month. There won't be any for this month. Previous month, I've probably got some data in there already for the previous month. So let's have a look at that. So I can now pick one of the optional months. Let's just put 6 for last month. And it'll be, this is my test server, so it's not going to have all the invasions we did. It's just got a couple of them there. So these commands going to my bot, and it's just responding straight away. It's not executing that step function. I'm not processing images here. It's just it's doing more of a synchronous response here. All right, so let's do actually some processing some images. So you can see here, I've got 7 images from a particular invasion over here. So I would. It's going to ask me where that invasion was. Raid. So I'll just pick one of these. Did we win? Yes, of course we did. And then I can drag the images across. So I've taken the screenshots from the game, and then I can just drag these in over here. So I'll just quickly do that. Now, this is not great on this surface. Sorry. Scroll across. So bear with me while I just do this, because that's going to maybe I'll see these images being processed. 3. The order of these images actually doesn't matter. Right. I will do them in order, but processing really doesn't care. So that was 4, 5, and 6, and then finally 7. All right. Excellent. So we've got the 7 files. So now I can run this command, and then I'm going to switch over quickly to step function so we can see it run. Through step functions, all right. So hit return. Come back over here. Refresh executions. You should see a third one appear here now. There it is. It's running. Awesome. And we can see it is processing those files. Let me bring Discord back up so we can see it running. And it's going to respond back saying, hey, we've processed those files, and then step functions then updates the second the files processing. The invasion's updated, we see the stats there, and then the month response goes back as well. All right, so it's going down that good path, processing the files, calculating the stats, sending messages back, and you can see I can send back multiple messages back to the user if I want to. The content you're sending back is just simple markdown. Unfortunately, it doesn't support tables, which would be really handy for this particular bot. But I can do things like that, as you can see. Now, the reports are going to be CSV files with a whole lot of stats, right? Quite large. Discord allows you to send files back, but only images. It doesn't support other file types, which is probably fair enough from a security point of view. So to share the reports back with the users, I just generate a pre-signed URL in S3. Just set timer on that to an hour. This should be plenty. Send back that URL, and then so people can just click on that link and get that. Just download that file from S3 and view that data if they want to. All right, so that's the bot working. Back to the slides. All right, so how do we go in terms of goals? Certainly the accuracy is much better than the manual process. So the first month, or June, when we did this, the person who's doing it manually was still doing manual. And so at the end of the month, we're able to compare, look at what I generated and what they did, and my data was significantly more accurate than what they had. Not always, though. There was one mistake that I found, and so the text track's not perfect. Right, in scanning these images, it struggles with some things, and especially people's names that have spaces in their names. I often found it was finding the first word of the name, not the whole name, and some other little quirks like that. So I've got had to put a bit of code in there now to sort of work around some of the limitations of TextTract. But in doing so, and this is the great thing about doing a pet project, is I learn about Discord bots, and I'd be very confident with writing more. My Python coding's a lot better, so I was able to just, I've always built little scrappy demos and stuff with Python. I've never really tried to do proper classes, proper testing and other things. And yeah, classes in Python are interesting. But yeah, I worked them out, understood them now a lot better. And of course, step function HTTP endpoints, and then TextTract, and its strengths and weaknesses too. But ultimately, Serverless is a really good choice for this workload. It met all the goals I had, especially from a cost point of view. And I think, as you saw, I refactored that architecture a few times, completely changed it up. And I think Serverless made that a lot easier for me to do that. What would I do next? Well, there's probably some more testing I can do in improving how it communicates with users. There's other stats and other things we might choose to collect as well. Now that I understand the access patterns to the DynamoDB table, I could add a local secondary index and get rid of those queries and just make it all gets. Which would just make it faster. Just isn't really going to make that much of a difference in this app, but just something I should do. Discord has all this user management functionality I just didn't try and use, so I could look at that and get rid of that stuff out of my bot, and then look at ways that I might be able to reduce the TextTract costs. So one way is there are tools out there where you could combine those images, stitch them together into one image, and that way I'm calling TextTract once rather than 7 times. Bigger image, but it's going to reduce my costs, right? Because I'm paying by API call. So, and there might be other tools out there that can do that scanning, maybe maybe cheaper and maybe more accurate than what I was getting. So, all right, there we go. Thank you.
All right, Greg.
Questions?
Questions? Wow. Yes.
No, you.
Oh, yeah. That was great. Thank you. Did you get a chance at all, or were you able to dig into, instead of taking screenshots, could you like peek at the network traffic, or were you able to, could you have possibly reverse engineered what was?
I think that would have been significantly harder to do than what I was doing. Unfortunately, look, there are some MMOs out there which have a lot of APIs for people to talk to, right? Like Eve and others like that. But there are ones like New World that don't support APIs at all. And so people are relying on screenshots. I hadn't really, other than looking to see if there were any APIs I could use, I hadn't considered other ways I could get that data other than screenshots or a different way of capturing those screenshots. But it's a good question.
How would you do it?
Sorry?
How would you have done
I'm not sure.
it? Just a question.
Yeah. Yes.
Maybe it's more around like probably the limitation of extract, or like how do you handle issues? So if you start uploading empty screenshots,
I started building, sorry.
if you start uploading empty screenshots,
Yep.
Would extract immediately tell you? Is there something you need to handle in your application that you're not getting anything back?
Sure. So yeah, there is certainly some error handling I put in place. There's something TextRate will tell me as well, but it only takes PNGs as far as I know. So if you try and upload a JPEG or something else, it'll fail straight away. I certainly have code that I'm getting at least one row of data. If I'm not getting that, then I fail. There is also another way we can capture data from the invasion, which is like a roster of just the names. And sometimes if we fail to capture the latter, whatever reason, we might resort back to this other screen capture we've got. So I've built that in as well. I didn't bother showing that today, but just another way of getting at least the names of who attended the invasion, not any of their stats. But the problems I was seeing was more around, if I just go back, see an image here somewhere. I'll go back to, sorry. There. Oh, no, the thing is like these icons here. Sometimes it'll think that's a column of something, and sometimes it just ignores it. The other interesting thing I found when I was doing the testing is it's not consistent on the same image. So sometimes it'll see 8, sometimes it'll see 9 columns for the same image. Okay. So I had to sort of build into that, and if I see a different number of columns, try and guess which one it is. Yeah. So there's some things there I've had to do, which are frustrating. But it was some ways the manual checking that sort of found some of those issues as well, the accuracy problems. Yeah. Yes.
Can you talk a bit about any security that you implemented, or
Sure.
like first IAM permissions, like anyone can upload the images, or just you can upload the images? Where is it enforced?
Sure. So let me go to my architecture diagram. Yeah, no, not that one. That one. All right. So from an IAM point of view, because I'm using SAM templates, the permissions for my Lambda functions can be very easily defined in the SAM template. So there's templates for like a DynamoDB CRUD policy. All right, and there's 2 lines of code in your SAM template. You don't have to define this whole policy. You just have to define 2 lines, basically DynamoDB CRUD and this particular table, add it to Lambda function, and it does all the IAM policy involved for you. So from an IAM point of view, especially on the Lambda functions, the execution roles are really easy. From a resource policy point of view, who can call these Lambda functions? Once again, the SAM template, you can specify what's the event source for each of these Lambda functions. It's only a few lines of code once again to say, oh, it's this step function or it's this API gateway to do that. So the IAM stuff here wasn't a problem. I mean, yes, I'm very familiar with IAM and have that love-hate relationship as well, like everyone else. But SAM takes away most of that heavy lifting. From a security point of view, I've only got one external endpoint, which is this. The API call I'm getting from Discord is signed. So in the Discord development console, there is a key I've got. dash that key into parameter store. So my template creates that resource, but I have to manually put the key in there. And so then the bot fetches that key, it gets the signed request coming in, generates a signature, other signatures the same. If they're not, it just can throw it away. Now, if I'm from a security point of view, probably the next thing to do would be to put throttling around this. So if I start getting excess number of calls, then throttle those and start dropping those. I was thinking about just using a URL external endpoint directly from the Lambda function, but then I can't throttle it easily. So I've kept the API gateway there, even though it's a little bit more cost maybe, so I can have some more security stuff here. The other thing I thought about was whether I should be doing authentication here. That would mean having another Lambda function, right, to do the authentication before I call the bot. It just didn't seem worth it because it's like 2 lines of code over here to do it. I might as well just do it here and then drop it there if it's a problem. Otherwise, I don't really have any other, pressing security concerns here that I'm worried about. Is that fair? Do you have any things that?
Yeah, so this API key is tied to your user, so
Mhm.
no other user can upload it.
It's tied to the bot. So anyone who's on this particular Discord server I was showing could call that command and could upload images. I could, using the Discord's member and management they have, I could put additional authentication on that. Only some users on that particular Discord server can call this API. But at the moment, I've limited, it's only being deployed to my friend's Discord server, right? I trust them for now, right? I haven't seen anyone taking advantage of this. So yeah, no, it's fair. So if I was going to make this bot more broadly available for other people playing this game to use, then you're absolutely right. I need to be thinking a lot more around security and load, and how do I control that and don't end up with a horrible build at the end of the day. Yeah. Yes.
In the end, how long did it take overall for you? And also, how easy was it to test the step functions locally?
Someone had to ask about testing step functions. Yes. So look, I was in between jobs, so that was the other thing I was doing here. So I actually, it was probably a couple of weeks working here, I'd have to say, to do all this, especially that first version was probably a few days. Once I had to pivot to, okay, I've got to go step functions now and re-architect this, and that certainly took a good week at least to do that. Obviously, testing this was easy, right? Writing just normal Python testing library, testing that was good. So yeah, one of the things that is challenging with step functions is testing them. I didn't automate that. I've just got some tests which are triggering the through the business logic to trigger that and launch it. In debugging it though, I certainly took advantage of the new testing functionality step functions has, where you can pull out a particular step, and if you know what the input is to that step, which you can see from previous executions previously, then you can just run that step again and just exercise that and make sure get that little step working without having to run the whole thing. So I was generally doing that through the console as a debugging tool rather than as a validation. But good question. Yes, it is a challenge. Yes.
So with regards to the screenshots, I'm not familiar with this game, but is it a web-based or?
No, it's PC-based.
PC-based?
So that's why we're just
It takes the screenshots.
taking screenshots of that as we're playing. Yeah, it's painful.
No. So there's no web-based option to get the invasion results.
Nope. So as I said, there's some MMOs which have gone very heavily, or just all APIs, right? And people build a lot of bots, and it's a whole economy on either one, right? Being driven by APIs, while others like New World unfortunately haven't. And it's really up to those makers where they want to invest in that, because then they've got to support those APIs, and
Right.
New World hasn't. Yes.
I got a question for test track. I remember test track can give us a complex level
Sure.
So I'm not sure whether you get this information or you need to train the model to make it better.
So the question was, TextRack can provide confidence levels with the data that's coming back.
Yeah.
How I use that, and the answer is no. I haven't really been looking at that, and I think that's a good suggestion that I should, because there's been some, especially players' names where it struggles. I probably should be looking at how confident it is with that, and then I'm not sure what I'll do at that point, other than maybe flag it back to the user to say, hey, this particular row in this table might not be correct. You might want to check it and maybe manually update it, because they've still got the images, right? They can still see it and maybe just correct that mistake.
Yeah, another question I try to understanding for this $5 bill for TextRack, how many image you handle?
Yeah, so I had the pricing there, I think, didn't I? So it comes at 1.5 cents per scan after that first 100. So it's not the cheapest service in the world. You know, if I'm doing hundreds of these, then that's going to start adding up. Yes, about
Really curious to know about your about your choice for Python as a programming language.
right. So I'm a C++ programmer by trade. Yeah, I have a PhD in C++ from a very long time ago. This is very
there we go.
so hence I'm doing right. So look, I've been using Python for last few years because it's just such an easy language to write something very quickly. Surely the fact that it's not as strongly typed as other languages, it caused me pain at some points, and a lot of the errors were because of that. And its way it does classes is also okay. The way you do classes in Python is also interesting, but for me, it was just, it's a language that I know that I can quickly build things if I want to try something. Sure, if I want to do this, to write full-scale applications, if I'm not in the data space, then I'd probably be looking at another language, maybe C# or something like that, right, to do that. But for the sort of work I'm doing, Python perfect, and it's easy, and there's a broad set of libraries I can pull in. Hopefully, I'm not pulling in any vulnerabilities, but there's a big ecosystem I can access that way. And I know it'll run perfectly in Lambdas, and I'm not caring about the speed of the Python code, right? That's completely irrelevant here. It's more about using the language and its features.
Yeah, very fun. You were custom queries with TextRack where you can train.
Yes, train your own model.
Responses.
Yes, I'm aware. Yeah, there's
I like
obviously
that
costs.
racing
But
ones.
no, it's another option.
That's another option.
I could train my model for these.
Might not be
images.
perfect if you worked around it.
No, someone else is also, before the talk, was suggesting that there's other open source tools we should look at. So that might be more accurate. So maybe I should try those. Definitely get that cost down to 0. Yeah, great. All right.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.